Welcome to the Tick Tock Podcast. The clock is always ticking, so let's synchronize our watches and dive in. I'm your host, Callie Brigham, and I'm here to help you make time for what matters. Hey, friends. 1 year ago, when I was walking around my house with my hands held open, wondering what God had for me in my and era, there was one person that I would seek out the most for approval and encouragement. And then about 6 months ago, when I had that fateful lunch with a friend, and she said, "Have you ever thought about doing a podcast?" This friend did. There was one person that I wanted approval and encouragement from. And the reason that this one person means so much to me is my whole life, I've had her in my corner. No matter what I did, no matter what crazy idea, no matter what dream, I knew that she had a vision and a belief for me more than anybody else in this world. She is extremely gifted. She is totally beloved. The minute anyone finds out who she is to me, they say, "Oh, I love her." She puts a smile on people's face. She definitely knows how to make time for what matters. More importantly, the people in her life that matter. She is a servant. She's extremely successful. And I kind of lied in every previous episode saying that this one was my favorite or this one was special because I'm really saving it for this one because I want my whole TikTok world to meet my mom, Kate DeBlander. Hi, Mom.
Hi,
Welcome to the
Callie.
show. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. This is so sweet. It brings a tear to my eye hearing you introduce me like that. Thank you.
Well, it's so true. And we have a special relationship. I'm an only child. And my mom was pretty young when she and my dad had me, both of them. And I think it's safe to say that I've been your little built-in best friend from the beginning. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And before we jump into a really engaging and fascinating topic today, because why wouldn't it be? It's me and my mom. I just have to bring back out when I was making my crazy huge announcement live to the social media. I pulled out, and if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see, and I can post it in our TikTok community, but I posted out a birthday card that you gave me last year. Do you remember this card, Mom?
Of course, I remember.
I'm going to read it to everybody. It was my birthday card. So it says, "Daughter, you're a joy to be with. Your laugh is contagious. Your spirit is uplifting. Oh, Mom, you're so sweet." And then you open it up and it says, "You should have your own podcast." This was not even something I had considered at all. And then you said, "Hee, who knows what the future holds? Love you so much, Mom and Dad." And then it says up at the top, "We will be your biggest fans."
Callie.
Is that
Who
true?
knew?
Are you my biggest fan?
Yes, of course. That was prophetic, too.
It
Yeah.
was. I should have added that to the list. She's a prophet. She's a prophetess.
Aw.
You know, when I did my intro episode, I jokingly said that I knew that my husband would be listening and my mom and dad. And you have not only listened to the intro episode, but I'm pretty sure you've been a faithful listener for,
I have. I
is it safe
absolutely
to say, every podcast since the beginning?
Probably, and I do take notes. So I learn a lot, and because I might not remember everything I learned, I write it down. I have a note in my phone that says Callie, and there goes all the notes from you and your guests.
And you're so cute too, because sometimes you'll just call me or message me or voice text me or something and say, "I did it today. I organized this," or "I took time for that," or "I made my brain drain," or there's different things that have stood out for you. And I'm so proud of you, Mom. Way to go.
Thank you. Still learning after all these years.
That's definitely something I thought of too, is that you have a love of learning and growing,
Yeah.
and that has been a priority for you to not just stay the same, but to prioritize growth and becoming stronger, better every day.
Part of my DNA and probably part of your DNA, but I'm a lifelong learner, as I think you are. And I know that Grandma has been on this podcast. She is definitely a lifelong learner. And yes, it's really a fun way to live life.
And I was going to shout out to Grandma. That was episode 21. It is to date the number one most listened to podcast. So no pressure, Mom. You've got to see if you can beat out Grandma. As
Oh, no competition here.
I was going to say, I
She
don't
could
think
be
it's,
the best. Yeah,
yeah,
we're
I
going
don't think it's
to
possible.
celebrate her 100th birthday. So when I become 100, we can make mine the number one podcast too.
We are. And in less than a week from when this podcast is airing, we are celebrating her 100th birthday,
Yep,
March 28th. So shout out to Grandma Deedle. Happy 100th birthday, right, Mom?
absolutely.
So there are so many things that we could talk about, and we do talk about. You and I are always finding different things that we want to share with each other, ahas, good books that we read, good movies that we read, good podcasts that we listen to. So we're always sharing that. You give me magazine articles and newspaper articles, and my kids, different things too, and my husband. So we could talk about 1,000 different things today, and we'll just have to have you back as one of our repeat guests because I know we won't cover it all. But when we were brainstorming about this, you sent me a list of possible topics, and something just jumped off the page at me, Mom, if you remember that. And I said, yes, that's the ticket. Let's go there. And the topic is, what would you tell your younger self?
Mhm. Love that.
So I think we're going to just go there today with a few different things, and keeping in mind that as we look back at life lessons that you've learned and how you've spent and invested your time in different areas, I think it's important to reiterate that there is no shame, no regret in this, only lessons. And I think that that's important too for all of our listeners, that as you take reflection, as you take time to look back, that we appreciate everything for what it was and everything from what we can learn from it. So I want to learn from you today, Mom. I'm excited to hear what you have to say and where our conversation's going to go. So maybe just tell a little bit about why this topic is going to be important to our listeners, the topic of a woman like you with lots of great experiences, lots of tough experiences, some wisdom. Why should we even think about what someone would tell their younger self?
Well, I think that I've been thinking about this because I've been going through a lot of pictures and memorabilia, wanting to get my life organized so that one day when I'm not here anymore, Callie, you are not going to have boxes and boxes of old pictures and papers and not know what to do with them, and they're going to all go in the garbage. So my goal is to get them organized so that you have joy looking through all these things, because like you said, you are an only child. So as I've gone through these things, I've started to think about who I was, who I am, and what I've learned along the way. And those are the things that I would tell my younger self. And before I even go into that, I just want to say that life seems brief the older we get. And I said to you, I may be one of your oldest podcast guests, not including your grandmother. And I think you might have had another friend of mine. And I know you have another friend of mine coming on. So, we're not the only older, wiser, more experienced, any kind of word that you want to use. But life at this point, and I'm 71 years old, and it everything seems like it's going really fast. And just recently, we did lose a friend a couple days ago who was only 80. When I was in my 30s and 40s, I thought, oh, that is really old. But now it doesn't seem old at all. And she certainly did not seem old. And that horrible, dreaded disease, cancer, is what took our friend. But I think, okay, here I am, 71. I may only be on the planet another 9 years, or I may be really fortunate, like my mom, and be here another 30 years. But judging by the last 10 years, how fast everything goes, it goes in a snap. And I don't know about all the listeners, but it is going to be hot summer before we know it. And then it is going to be Christmas time before we know it. And it's going to all go in a flash. And so it makes me retrospective and to think about where I've come from and where I still want to go, because I'm still excited about life. There's so many fun things to do, and life is a joy. So so as I looked back, first of all, I want to say things I'm glad about, that I'm just so thankful for. And the first thing that comes to mind is I grew up in the home of Grandma Dito, as so many of your listeners have heard. And I hope that I've passed on those qualities of the home that I grew up in to you, and that you're passing them on to Braden and Maddie. But I grew up with a very positive home. And Callie, as you said, that I always believed in you and thought you could do anything and everything. Well, that's the way my parents were with me. And I'll tell you just a little bit about my roundabout story, but through all the different adventures, they always believed in me, and they always said that I could do anything I wanted to do. I was so smart, I was so capable, just built all of that belief into me, and I'm so grateful for that. And then they exposed me to wonderful things. They exposed me to the arts. They exposed me to theater. They exposed me to music and symphony and opera and art museums and literature and travel, all these kind of things. And they say that life travel is a book, and if you do not travel, you only read one page. And there's just so much to be said about travel, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, because, as you know, when you were growing up, we traveled to family, but they were great places to travel. And we traveled to maybe a wedding for a family, or we went camping, or we went on car trips and things like that. But you were exposed, and I was exposed. And my dad and mom did something really neat for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years before I graduated from high school. My dad would take a month off every summer, and we'd plan out a great trip, and we drove out west a couple of times. We went to Montreal, we went up the East Coast, we went down south. I think we live in Pensacola Beach, as your listeners know, and there is a national seashore park at the end of our beach called Fort Pickens. And my mom reminds me that one of the car trips took us down to Fort Pickens. And I don't remember being there, but she has pictures to prove it. But all those kind of experiences, I'm so fortunate that I grew up in a home like that. And I know that not everyone was able to have that. Many of my friends did not grow up like I did. And maybe there was toxic relationships. And I know that happens. But I just feel that I'm so fortunate that did not happen to me. And of course, my friends that had that experience, many of them have overcome, and it has made them really deep, wise people. But I didn't have that. I had a lot of really positive, loving, I guess, just affirming me. And so I'm really, really grateful for all of that. And a very big extended family with lots of cousins and aunts and uncles. And I'm having a lot of fun at this stage in my life, reconnecting with all the cousins. And I only have one aunt left, my mom and one Aunt Marilyn, but lots and lots of cousins, and cousins that are your age, cousins that are Braden and Maddie's age and younger. And I'm making lots of effort to reconnect with so much great family. So I'm grateful for that. And then I'm grateful that at a young age ripe old age of 25, I came to know the Lord. I grew up in a Jewish family, and I remember going to Israel on a summer trip about 18 years old and sitting on a hill thinking, is God real? I don't know. Here I was in the land of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Is God real? And I just kind of put that question away and came home. I was 18. And about 7 years later, somebody started talking to me about Jesus. And the way Jewish people would say Jesus would be Yeshua the Messiah. And and I just decided to believe and become a Jewish believer. And and it was an incredible decision that I made, and I'm so grateful that God drew me into His kingdom, because really, um, there's a verse in the Psalms that says he took me out of a pit and he put my feet on a solid rock and on dry ground. And really, I feel like that was my story, and I'm so grateful. And the reason I feel like that, and I tell these stories all the time, is that um, like I said, grew up in such a loving, wonderful family and went to college in Boulder, Colorado. And it was 1970, and it was a very crazy time of the world, and all the hippies and everybody was going crazy. It was anti-war, and a lot of values were being challenged. And here I was in Boulder. And lately I've been thinking, well, I think it really matters where you go to college. Maybe if I hadn't gone to Boulder, I wouldn't have gone off the deep end. But then one of my friends said I should not be blaming anyone. I made those choices to go off the deep end. But my environment certainly didn't help me stay on the straight and narrow path. So anyway, I decided that being a hippie and dropping out of college and hitchhiking all around the country and making my own clothes and living on the earth and all that kind of stuff was a lot more exciting and fun than going to school. And I feel really regretful, and I'm always apologizing to my mom for putting her through so much grief. But I became a hippie and did all that, and so I'm just glad that I'm not in that lifestyle anymore. I'm glad it was only a 6 or 7 year period, and that I came out of it unscathed. But there were some great things that I learned in that, and I'm grateful for this too. The hippie movement taught me to eat natural foods. And I've been eating natural foods since I was 20 years old, and that's over 50 years. And so I'm grateful for that. Not that I'll never get sick, and not that I won't have, but I've done a lot of good things in eating organic foods and eating natural foods. Callie was raised without sugar. She was raised taking sushi. We call them nori rolls. They're California rolls to lunch, and hummus and all these things, whole grain breads. And I found out later that she would trade these lunches for marshmallow sandwiches.
No, I have to interject. I did not trade them because nobody wanted them.
That's
I
right.
tried to trade them. We would play up for grabs, down for keeps. And I'd up for grabs my hummus and lettuce sandwich on the homemade bread from our family bakery, and nobody down for keeps it.
No, it
So I
went in
had
the
to have my
garbage.
best friend Andrea bring me an extra peanut butter and marshmallow fluff with chocolate chip sandwich the next
Yeah. Yeah, but at home, she grew up eating lots of natural foods and organic and brown rice and whole grains and all those things. And so I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful I learned about exercise and taking care of myself and all of those things. So those are things that I'm glad about. Um, but then as I think, all right, if I would have a conversation with my younger self. And as I'm going back, I told you, I'm reading letters that my mom and dad wrote to me, and my sister and my brother and friends. And I'm thinking, I if I could do it over again, in many ways, I wish I would have listened better. I wish I would have listened to my parents, because they had a lot of wisdom. And I was rebellious, and I thought I knew everything, and I was going to do what I thought was right. And I'm sorry for that. I feel, in some ways I feel like I caused some pain, but I think that for the last 50, 45, or 50 years, I've made it made it up to them. It was a short period of time, but I think I would have listened. Maybe I would have saved myself a lot of grief. But it's hard to listen when you're that age. And I had a conversation with a mom at the school where Braden and Maddie go. I picked the kids up today, and she was lamenting that her soon to be 14-year-old won't listen to her. And I said, I know, it just seems to be part of the growing up process. But my parents had great wisdom. And so I would tell my younger self, listen, don't be so sure that you know your own way. And the second thing that I would tell my younger self was that I don't have to be a perfectionist. I think that I always felt like I had to do, especially growing up, I felt like I had to be perfect and do things, perfectly, and nobody can do things perfectly. And I think that if I would just relax and do my best and enjoy it, I would think I would have done better. I would have had more fun, those kind of things. So don't be such a perfectionist, I would tell my younger self. And then the third thing I was thinking about that I would tell my younger self is to work in your strengths, work in my strengths, and not feel like I had to have somebody else's strengths. And I am grateful that I found the company Mary Kay at a fairly young age. I was 38 years old when Mary Kay came into my life. And I'm so grateful because it was such a positive company and so encouraging. And Mary Kay was all about helping women to be their very best and become everything that God created us to be. And so I took that opportunity and just totally ran with it. But as I look back, I think I would often compare myself to other people. And so many times when we compare ourselves, we're comparing our weaknesses with their strengths. And so we always come up short. And so if I was going to talk to my younger self, I would say, don't worry about that so much. Because for me, my strengths are relationships and communicating with people. And I'm not so great at strategy and planning, things like that. Things that I am detailed oriented, but not always with all the details. I don't really like all of that. And so I think for a lot of years I beat myself up that I wasn't any good at that. And it's really funny because this great friend of ours who did just pass away, she was not a detailed person whatsoever. She was totally relational and totally fun. And she rose to the absolute top of our company. And I remember having a conversation with her, and Callie's dad, Dave, was with us, my husband. And Dave said to her, he said, you need to tell Kate. He says, I worry about her because she's not more strategic and she doesn't plan and she doesn't have a 5-year plan and all of those things. And I don't know how she can get to the top. So how do you do that? And this friend of ours, she said, strategic plan? Are you kidding me? And she just started laughing her head off. And she said, I don't have any of that. And so it was just great for, first of all, my husband to hear that I don't have to think like he does in order to be successful. And second, that it's okay to work in your strengths. And so I realized that as I went up our career path, so to speak, and I became more successful, I realized it more and more. And I had people to help me in the areas that I wasn't as strong in. But I think that if I could talk to my younger self, I would say, figure out what you're great at and just do it. And don't beat yourself up for what you're not great at. And like we said earlier, I've always been a lifelong learner, and I would listen back in the day, I would listen to cassette tapes of people that were successful and leadership trainers and all those kind of things. And I remember one leadership trainer saying that he was at the top of the game, really. And he would say, I'm really not good at very much. I'm good at 2 or 3 things, and I do those all the time. And all the rest, I either have to let go or I let other people do them for me. So I have accepted that, or embraced that would be the word, that I don't have to be great at everything. Let's be great at the things I am great at and appreciate that and not beat myself up over the things that I'm not great at. But at the same time, we can always strive to be better. We can always do that. And so I love listening to your podcast because that helps me be more organized with my time and get my goals set. And though I always make jokes with Callie. I was telling her this morning, I said, well, I put my house to sleep, but it seems to wake up in the middle of the night. And before I know it, it's a mess. And the other thing I was going to tell your listeners, I think they might get a kick out of it. At this, we call it my age, it's a more interesting age, we could say, because, there's been a lot of life experience. A lot of women my age don't sleep that well. And a lot of them wake up at, like me, at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I can't go back to sleep. And it's not even that my brain is running and I'm worried or I'm thinking, it's just, I just can't fall asleep. And I said to a friend of mine one time, I was lamenting about it. She says, "Oh, you should have called me. I was up." And we were with a group of women, and she said, "If you ask half the women in this room, they're all up at 2 and 3 in the morning." And so it's great to be accountable about going to sleep. And then I think going to sleep at a great time is a really, really good idea. But a lot of us wake up in the middle of the night, no matter what we do. And so it is what it is, but it's pretty funny.
It sounds like it's not just your, house that keeps waking up in the middle of the night, it's you too.
Me
I
and
put
my,
myself to sleep and then I get in my house too.
yeah.
Mom, you are so wise, and one of the things that I've noticed too, as you were talking about figuring out what you're great at, you've also surrounded yourself with dear, dear friends that celebrate who you are and also bring the other things to the table. One of my favorite stories about you was shared to me by your bestie, Kendra. Also reached the pinnacle of success in Mary Kay in her own very strategic, very consistent, very thought out, very planned way, right?
Yes,
You are
absolutely.
best of friends and you could not be more different in
A
that.
lot of ways different. Yes.
And she shared the story that she called you one day, and at some point at the beginning of the conversation, you asked her, "Kendra, what are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I'm folding laundry." I think she was doing something, she's multitasking, talking to you, folding laundry, which is definitely something I would do because I want to be efficient with my time. And she said back to you, "What are you doing, Kate?" And you said, "I'm just sitting here talking to you." And that's what people see in you, Mom. And that is what has developed a strength of relationship that allowed you to bypass maybe what somebody else would need in their strategic or task-oriented mind. You were able to bypass that
Hmm.
and touch people's hearts, and you were also with friends and collaborated with people in your life that brought the other strength to the table.
Definitely, Callie. And the other part of that story is I called your grandma and I said to grandma, I said, "What are you doing right now while we're talking?" And she said, "I'm sitting here talking to you." And so, so much of that, so much of who I am came from my mom and her mom, as you've heard her talk, and a lot of who you are comes from your mom, me. And it's neat to see these traits passed down in the family. But yes, they say also enthusiasm bypasses the conscious mind. So maybe I was able to, with enthusiasm and relations, able to bypass some of the strategic planning, or I gleaned it in other ways, like you said, through collaboration with great, great, great friends and through the support of the company. Yeah.
Well, and I think God placed you in a company that is relational, that is people focused. And so we also have to trust his process and where he takes us because he wanted you right in the middle of where you could influence and be influenced in that arena. I remember one time, I mean, I guess I was probably in high school, and we were pulling into the house and you got a phone call and you said a few niceties and, "Oh, that's great," and whatever. Got off the phone. And I said, "Who was that?" And it was one of your consultant's husbands calling to let you know that she wanted you to know that she just had her baby, I think. So you probably don't even remember this. And I'm thinking, oh, that must be like one of her top consultants or one of her. And you said, I don't, she may not have even still been a consultant in your unit. Like she was not a top performer. She was not somebody that was your top salesperson. She was not one of your leaders, but she felt so bonded to you that in that most defining moment of her life, she wanted you to be the one to be called.
Hmm.
So, right, why do we doubt ourselves and why do we think that we're not enough or that we have to change or that we have weaknesses when we look back like you said, and we say, younger self, you are exactly who you were supposed to be in that
Right.
situation. I love that story. And do you even remember that? You probably don't.
I don't remember, but that makes me think of a time that you and we were in New York City, and you were feeling less than, and you were unsure, and had concerns, and we sat in a pizza restaurant in New York, and we got out some paper, and I think we both wrote down all the negatives that we were hearing in our mind, and those voices that talked to us, and all the junk, and we wrote it all down on a piece of paper. And then we finished our pizza, and we found the dirtiest, ugliest, overflowing garbage can we could possibly find. And in New York, there's a lot of them. And we crumpled those pieces of paper up, and we threw them away. And hopefully we just threw them right out of our minds and banished them from us.
Yeah, that was it for me. That was advice on that trip, that to leave it, to just leave it and physically leave it. And
Turning.
so,
Mhm.
yeah, and I remember telling you I think we wrote it on paper napkins I remember this. And I was going to start it because I was the one with the issues. So I start writing, and I remember you said, "Me too. I've got some too." And we wrote people's names, and we wrote everything. We wanted to just leave in the trash. But of course, mostly our own issues. But I remember you're like, "I'm going to play at this game too. I've got stuff too." So at the end of the day, we all have stuff, right? We've all
Yeah,
got things
we
that could
all
hold
have
us
stuff.
back.
Yeah.
We all have stuff, but listening to wise counsel, not being so prideful, not thinking that we know everything, not beating ourselves up or thinking that perfection equals love or perfection equals respect or perfection equals anything, because it doesn't. And then working in our strengths as well.
Yeah.
Really wise, Mom. Well, as we finish this conversation, which makes me sad because I want to keep going, is
Aw.
there anything else that you would want to share before we wrap up?
Well, I just think that there are different chapters in life. And I want to encourage your listeners to enjoy every chapter. And there's the chapter, where you're still living at home, and maybe you're in college, or you're just out of college, and you maybe in your first jobs, and you don't have long-term relationships yet, and it's a big busy time of work, and then maybe you have a long-term relationship, maybe you're married, and then later you're having little ones, and now where you are, Callie, with teenagers, and um and then where I am at this chapter, this is a fairly new chapter. I've been retired for 5 years, and it's been a wonderful chapter because it's opened up more time to do things that I enjoy. And I think of my sister is in the same chapter as I am, and we are just so enjoying talking to each other nearly every day, and making plans and traveling and seeing. We spend a lot of time with my mom, which wouldn't have happened if I was still working. I wouldn't have that leisure to go down to South Florida every 4 to 6 weeks, and sometimes more, and to talk on the phone. My sister and we do a 3-way call with my mom many days, and all three of us are on the phone, and my brother took a new job, so he doesn't have the freedom right now, and we're all thinking maybe he's having second thoughts about this job. But this chapter is a wonderful chapter, and more time for friends, and I'm very involved in a Bible study that I just love. Bible Study Fellowship, it's called, if anybody's looking for something great for in-depth. And I'm able to, and nonprofit work, I'm involved with the Domestic Violence Agency here in Pensacola. And so every chapter you're able to do different things, and we're able to travel more, and we have more income than we did, especially than when you were growing up, Callie. And so you're just able to do different things. Every chapter has its joys, its special joys. And of course, every life has sorrow and hardship, and there's difficulties in life. That's what life is. But it's all about doing our very best to overcome those things and move forward. But I'm enjoying this chapter. It's wonderful. And having a lot of fun. And so I would encourage everybody to enjoy every chapter that you're in. And as I said in the beginning, they don't last that long. You think they're lasting forever, but they don't last that long. And so to enjoy the journey and get what you can and give what you can out of it, and you'll have you have lots of stories to tell along the way, and then you have lots of stories to tell when you're sitting where I'm sitting. And I'm grateful. I don't have any regrets. I think that maybe I would have done a few things differently if I had the wisdom that I have now. But you don't have that wisdom when you're 20 years old or you're 30 years old. And so I think just honoring the chapters and being grateful has a lot to do with a happy life. Mm-hmm.
You've done a beautiful job of that too. We've always described it as you have a beautiful box of Godiva chocolates, Mom, and you've pulled them out from under your chair and you eat one and you savor it and you make everyone around you say, "I want that too. I want that too." And I've always followed in your footsteps and I've wanted your life and I've wanted your joy and I've wanted your perspective in so many things. And I'm so thankful that we live 5 doors down from each other, you guys. We live 5 doors down from each other. And you prayed us here. You prayed us to Florida. You prayed my babies here as I went through infertility. They're here now. And we had a rule when we first moved down. We lived about a mile away at the time, that for the sake of my husband, that you guys had to call before you came over. We lived a mile away. You had to call. Do you remember? Then we said, okay, fine, you have to knock before you come in. And then we're probably like, just come in. We had a baby and a toddler. We're like, help us. So thank you for the Sunday dinners. Thank you for the example that you've set for me that has made me want my own box of Godiva chocolates. You have found peace and passion and purpose in every chapter, and you have led a legacy for other people to do the same thing. So, Mom, I give a gift, as you know, to each one of my guests. And my gift is the pretend gift of a bonus hour. So, if you had an extra hour that you did not need to account for, what would you do, Mom, with an extra hour?
Well, before I answer that question, I wanted to say one more thing to you, Callie, and your listeners. I remember your grandmother saying that when her mother could say yes, she wanted to say yes. And I have embraced that too. Maybe even not even consciously, but when I hear your grandma talk about her mother, which is your great grandmother, I think it's important. I try to say yes whenever I can say yes. You know, can you pick up the kids? Yes. If I can possibly do that, yes. Can you do this? Can you do that? Can we do this? Can we do that? Yes. So, and I think that's been a really important process. Yeah. And I'm glad I've inherited that and you've inherited it
I'm
as
glad
well.
too.
Yeah.
I know, and my daughter is now at the stage where almost every afternoon she says, "Will you play volleyball with me?" And honestly, I don't always want to play volleyball with her, but I'm in this season where when your 13-year-old asks if I can say yes, I say yes. So thank you for passing that on too.
That's called the open lap policy. When your kids want to be with you and they want to talk to you, do it, because they don't always want to do that. So when they do it, because it's so rich. So if I had an extra hour, I was thinking about that, Callie. There are 3 or 4 things that I'd want to do. And I might want to go to the spa. We live across the street from the beach, and I love being on the beach. I might want to take a book out there. I might just want to walk. I love being outside here where we live. But I think family comes even before all that. And makes me emotional. It's playing games with you and Josh and the kids. It is visiting my mom. It's talking to my sister on the phone. Family. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Oh, and spending time with your dad. Don't forget him.
He knows. He knows.
Yeah, he knows.
That is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Well, you have built a beautiful life, Mom, and you've done it intentionally and you've done it in a beautiful way with your own strengths, and we're the recipients of it. And I want to thank you. And I wanted to read to you a verse, Titus 2 and in verse 4, these older women must train the younger women. to love their husbands and their children, to live wisely and be pure, to work in their homes, to do good.
Aw.
So thank you for training us younger women in this generation in all of these things, to love, to live wisely, to be pure, to work, and to do good. And you've done all of those things. Well done, Mom.
Thank you, Callie. You're the fruit of my labor.
Thanks, Mom.
I love
You're a
you.
blessing. I hope everyone enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. And what a gift saying yes to this podcast, having this time with my mom.
That's right. I said yes, didn't I?
Yeah, you did say yes. And even though you were like, I don't know what we talk about, I said, oh, I have no problem. We're going to talk about it plenty. Beautiful job. Thank you guys for listening. God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me on the TikTok podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and leave a 5-star review. Your feedback fuels our mission to help you master your time. Set your alarm for our next episode, and until then, make every moment count.